Ba weep grana, weep niniban. Now, if you know what I just said, then you're in the right place. If you don't know what I just said, then you need to stay tuned, because we're going to talk about the making of G1 Transformers. See, since 1984, I've been a huge fan of the Transformers. I've also been a huge fan of art and animation. And I've managed to develop a collection of a few bits of production art from the original Transformers. I'm also very fortunate right now to have on loan some articles from the archive of Wally Burr, who was the voice director for the original Transformers, G.I. Joe, Jem, and a host of other classic cartoons. So, join us as we take a look at the making of the original Transformers. And, just for those of you who don't know, Ba weep grana, weep niniban was the universal greeting in Transformers the movie. So, it's 1984, and we've got the green light to do a cartoon called Transformers. Well, we got to round up some actors. In order to do that and find out who's going to play whom, they're all given audition sheets. You can see here, this is the audition sheet for Megatron, and it has some of Wally Burr's notes on it. What's interesting about it is he already had an idea of who he wanted to read for Megatron, because he's got, scribbled across the top, read Welker. And another thing that's interesting about these audition sheets is they tell you a little bit about the character, as well as giving you some sample dialogue. If you ever wondered how old in human years Megatron was supposed to be, according to this, it says think 30-ish. And by way of comparison, as you can see from the audition sheet for Optimus Prime, according to this, he's about 35. Another interesting thing is you can see various notes that Wally wrote to keep in mind when he was reading people for Optimus Prime. Noble, a man of character, not too fast. Of course, Peter Cullen ended up landing this role. For Starscream's audition sheet, there was no model available, but apparently they didn't need one, because producer Jay Bacall had apparently called to Wally, because he wrote a note here. Bacall says, cast Latta. So, as you can imagine, Starscream saying he didn't need to audition for this role. As you might have guessed from the notes on Starscream's audition sheet, Wally Burr not only was the voice director, he also cast the actors who played in Transformers. Well, we've got our actors together, now they need a script. Here we have the screenplay for Part 5 of Five Faces of Darkness, which was written by Flint Dille. And as you can see, it has various checks and notes on it, because this was the copy Wally Burr was using when they were recording. What's interesting to note is that the script was not titled Five Faces of Darkness. When they were in production, it was just miniseries, days 1 through 5. And in fact, as you can see, Wally Burr's notes here say The Killing Jar. If you're familiar with the series, The Killing Jar was the next episode that aired after Five Faces of Darkness. So while they were still working on it, none of the titles were set in stone. Well, after you've got a screenplay, someone goes in and numbers all of the pages and copies those into a dialogue script, because the actors don't need to read all the descriptions of action, they just need the dialogue. And another thing that's rather funny is that the dialogue script was not written and numbered by the author of the screenplay. It was done by a secretary in the office. So now that we have our actors together with their dialogue scripts, it's time to go into recording session. In order to keep track of who's recorded what, Wally would use a cast plot. And as you can see, it has the names of all the characters in a particular episode matched with the names of all the actors who played them. And as they would do the recording, he would check off when their work was completed. In the world of voiceover recording, there are two different ways that you can do a project like this. Either ensemble recording, or what used to be called railroad style. Ensemble is sort of like when an old radio show where you'd have everyone together and they would be reading their parts off of each other. That's something that Wally says he actually prefers doing, because then the actors can act off of each other. In railroad style, which is done nowadays for video games a lot, individual actors will come in and they will record all of their lines, and there won't be anybody else in the booth with them. But despite that preference, when it came to recording for Transformers the movie, some of the big-name actors like Orson Welles did not come in with the rest of the cast. Orson Welles recorded all by himself. So did Judd Nelson. And for those who are fans of G.I. Joe the movie, for that particular movie, Wally actually had to go all the way to Miami to get Don Johnson to record some of his lines because he was working on Miami Vice at that point. So we have our story and we have our voice track recorded. Time to animate, right? Not yet. You see, the animators have to know exactly what it is they're going to be drawing, so that's why they have storyboards. This here is the copy of the entire storyboard for Transformers the movie that Wally Burr used as a reference when they were doing recording. And the reason why he had this as a reference was so that he could tell what was going on in a given scene. And also because some of the lines had to be recorded after the initial script in what's called pickup. Now, a pickup line is not how a Decepticon gets a date on Saturday night. Pickup lines are done after the initial recording. Oftentimes in the process of production there are changes made to the script or changes made to the storyboard, in the case, as there were several cases of that here. And you can see this line is highlighted because Wally had to make sure they got this line in pickup. So next time you're watching the movie and Starscream gets to "My fellow Decepticons" as your new leader, you know that that was recorded after the initial run. For those of you who are fans of the art of animation, anytime you pick up a book by Disney and they talk about the animation process, you'll notice that the way they do storyboards is a little bit different than what you see here. This is actually from Prepare to Board, which was written by a veteran Disney animator. And you can see the differences here. A feature-length production from a studio like Disney or Pixar uses very loose and general storyboards because they're changing a lot of things as they go along. Transformers the movie was originally produced to be like a feature-length episode, and its boards, as you can see by comparison, are much closer to the example she gives from a television production, where everything is very neat and clean, and the boards very closely match what you'll see in the final animation. So what about this finished animation? What's interesting is up to this point, all of the steps of production I've described would apply to either traditional or modern CG animation. Only now do we reach divergent paths. Obviously, if we're talking about a CG animated series like Transformers Prime, that's made up of drawings that have been rendered into the computer to create 3D images and so on. But traditional animation is made up of literally thousands of cells like these. Now these are not from Wally's collection, these are from mine. These two cells of Megatron are from a sequence from Transport to Oblivion, and they have notations at the top, A2 and A4. That's because traditional animation involved a multiplane camera, they were also called at one point Oxenberry camera stands, where you had an A level, B level, C level if necessary, then a background. By way of comparison, this cell of Starscream was numbered B17, which meant that it was on a lower level and there was someone in front of Starscream. I actually haven't figured out what sequence from which episode this is from, so any of you folks with good eyes, check Season 1 and let me know if you know where he's cameoing. Another problem for those who might collect cells, and you can really see it with the cells of Megatron, they're often sold along with the original pencils, which by this point in time are stuck fast to the back of the cells. You can see Megatron's pencil right here, and what's really interesting about it is you can tell that somebody had indicated there would be a lot more shading on Megatron than you see in the finished shot. Oh, well, he decided to get out of the way, or maybe Starscream moved him. You can tell with Starscream, the pencil is stuck fast to the back of him. What I did was I scanned it and printed a copy to go in the frame. To give you a comparison, this cell is from a Japanese show, Gundam Wing, which was done about 11 years after Transformers. This cell is not stuck to its pencil, obviously, so you can see the mess of inks on the back and the crazy mecha goodness on the front. So for those of you who happen to have cells in your collection, please take care of them because they were production art. They weren't meant to last this long. Keep them in a dry environment. If you can't separate it from its pencils, like Megatron here, don't try to. I'm just going to have to scan his pencil in and print out a copy when I finally get to frame him. This one, I keep it against something white so that if it ever does stick to something, I can just frame it as is. If you'd like to learn more, then I welcome you to check out the Voices of Cybertron website, which has articles and backstory on the origins of Transformers. And also, you can subscribe to this channel because hopefully we'll be having some more videos in the future. For Voices of Cybertron and Golden Age Video, this is Tut. Till all are one.